President Trump is again attacking U.S. intelligence agencies, questioning their reports that Russia is attempting to influence the 2020 election as it did in 2016. In a pair of tweets yesterday, the president wrote, quote, John Bolton, one of the dumbest people I've met in government, and sadly I've met plenty, states often that I respected and even trusted Vladimir Putin of Russia more than those in our intelligence agencies. While, of course, that is not true, if the first people you met from so-called American intelligence were dirty cops who have now proven to be sleazebags at the highest level, like James Comey, proven liar James Clapper, and perhaps the lowest of them all, wacko John Brennan, who headed the CIA, you could perhaps understand my reluctance to embrace. End quote. It's just the latest sign of President Trump's uneasiness with the U.S. intelligence community that is meant to be working for him. It's also the subject of a new investigation for the New York Times Magazine, headlined Unwanted Truths Inside Trump's Battles with U.S. Intelligence Agencies. New York Times Magazine writer at large Robert Draper is the reporter behind that article. He's also the author of a new book titled To Start a War: How the Bush Administration Took America into Iraq. Welcome, Robert. Great to have you with us. First off, what did you learn while reporting this piece, and how is the Trump administration responding?
Sure. Basically, what I learned is that the intelligence community, which is there to give you the ground truth, or as close to it as you can get, even if that is an uncomfortable truth, has been on a collision course with this president really from before he became president, because frankly, they have told him things he doesn't want to hear. Among those being that, as you referenced, that Russia interfered in the 2016 election and did so with the aim of electing Donald Trump, and that they intend to do so again in 2020, and again towards the same aim, because that has, in President Trump's view, called into question the legitimacy of his presidency. He has just simply wanted that not to be said. He has pushed back against those who have said it. He has even fired people who have refused to say otherwise. And so this investigation that I've done basically is a deep examination of how this president has pushed back on those who are trying to tell him what's real, and instead pushing his alternative narrative.
And so then what are the practical impacts of a president separating himself from the intelligence community because, as you say, he simply doesn't like what they tell him? Doesn't that have national security implications?
It certainly does. It means, for example, when the intelligence community comes to him and says, hey, there's this coronavirus that began in China and is going to be coming our way, the president refuses to take it seriously, despite the fact that the presidential daily brief that he received on this subject made quite clear of the risks. But it means that his big, beautiful economy, as he's put it, could very well crater. It means that a lot of people will die during an election year. It is a political inconvenience for him, and so he's refused to respond to it. Yes, it does have national security implications. It's also that when they have told him, actually, Mr. President, despite all of your bragging to the contrary, North Korea does not intend to relinquish its nuclear weapons. When he refuses to hear that, when he refuses to have the truth, then you do have to wonder, why does the intelligence community even exist? And alternatively, what does it mean when the president is getting his sources, getting his information from people outside the intelligence community? Just where is he getting it from?
Absolutely. Terrifying when you put it that way. You did draw a connection between your article on Trump and your book on Bush, looking at how a president can abuse intelligence. So let's talk about your book now and former President George W. Bush. When he left office, he was viewed favorably by a third of the country. But by 2018, he was viewed favorably by 61%. So, for those who may not remember or are too young to know, help us understand why the Bush administration wanted to go to war and what the truth was behind that justification.
Sure, Anna. I mean, first, I'll just say that President Bush, I think, is enjoying a resurgence in popularity simply because people looking at this administration have come to the conclusion that decency matters, that someone who takes the decorum of the White House and the institution of both the executive branch and the legislative branch seriously is an important thing. It nonetheless was the case that when he went to war, it was in the context of September 11th, something for which he was unprepared, and despite the fact that he had received a number of intelligence briefings warning him of an imminent attack in the U.S. I think Bush overcompensated for that. He was worried about what the next attack would be, was determined to thwart it wherever it might be, came to see Iraq as the predominant threat, a country that could perhaps confederate with al-Qaeda and create a 9/11 scenario that was that much worse because it would involve weapons of mass destruction. The problem was that almost every bit of that scenario is factually without basis. Saddam didn't have any connections with al-Qaeda, he didn't have any weapons, and he didn't have any intentions of attacking the American homeland.
And is that what U.S. intelligence told the president?
Well, essentially, they believed that he had weapons capability. They believed that he had some active program, if not an actual stockpile. They weren't sure on any of these things for absolute, but those were their beliefs. Nonetheless, and the president didn't ask them their opinion on this subject, they were also of the belief that Saddam, like many dictators who possess weapons of mass destruction, had no intent of attacking the U.S. with it, and would likely only do so if Iraq was first attacked. That was briefed on Capitol Hill, and the Bush White House didn't take kindly to it because they were really of the determination to sell a war on the basis of Saddam being a threat to us when there simply was not any intelligence to support that.
So there clearly were other instances of another administration having an uneasy relationship with its intelligence community.
Right. I mean, there's a fundamental difference. I mean, one is that I don't see any evidence that that Bush was willfully making things up. He believed what he believed. I see no evidence that Bush, as Trump has done, has gone back to the intelligence community and said, I don't like this intelligence you're giving me. It's politically inconvenient to me. Go back and get something that I prefer. And I certainly didn't see any evidence of George W. Bush, when he was president, firing a member of the intelligence community for telling him something that upset him, that was something he didn't want to hear. Those are very, very sharp distinctions between how the Bush administration reacted and how Trump does today.
Stark differences, for sure. All right. Well, Robert Draper, thank you so much for joining us. And your book, To Start a War, How the Bush Administration Took America into Iraq, is available now. Thanks again.
Thank you.